Good morning. It is 9:37, Wednesday, April 15th. This is the TDN Writers Room presented by Keeneland. My name is Joe Bianca. I'm the associate editor of the Thoroughbred Daily News, and the stimulus check just hit this morning, so I'm in a good mood.
Get out.
Indeed. The rest of you might be too rich to get it, but I got it.
Well, good morning, Joe. Bill Finley here, and I am the Thoroughbred Daily News' Nebraska racing correspondent.
Jonathan Green, the general manager of DJ Stable, and I am pleased to be an owner of racehorses today, especially with all the good news that's coming in from a couple of other owners that have stepped up their game and made our industry even better.
Alan Carrasso, managing editor, TDN, and I apologize for the glow off my forehead. After 16 days, I had to cut it. So my apologies. So bear with me, but good morning, everyone. Great to be with you.
TDN Writers Room is brought to you by Keeneland, home of world-class racing and industry-leading sales. Entries for the 2020 September yearling sale are open through Friday, May 1st at september.keeneland.com. Let's start this week. We actually have a good amount of news and stuff to talk about for the first time since the shutdown. It's really kind of been like pulling teeth here recently, trying to fill up the content hours. But we'll start with the news of the Saudi Cup and the Saudi Cup's purse. This was something that I thought about almost immediately after the indictments of Jason Servis and Jorge Navarro came down in that scandal. I was like, damn, they couldn't have gotten him a week earlier so he wouldn't have had that $1 million to pay his legal fees. But apparently he's not going to have that because the Jockey Club of Saudi Arabia says they're going to have their own investigation into this before they release the purse money. Obviously, this is big news, and I wonder if it's something that'll kind of taint, our American participation in the Saudi Cup going forward, that the first winner had to get his, purse, withheld. This is a big thing. And I think it's cool to have some kind of other consequences because this, for those who were happy to see these indictments and see potentially some consequences coming from this longstanding cheating, allegedly, I think it's a good thing to have at least some immediate consequences because this case is going to worm its way through the system. It's going to take a long time, I think, to get resolved. I think in the end, even if these guys are found guilty, they're not going to do much jail time, like Bill has said before. So I rarely ever would give a tip of the cap to Saudi Arabia, but I'll give one to the Jockey Club of Saudi Arabia for withholding the purse in this scenario. Guys, thoughts?
Yeah, Joe, first of all, ever since we've been doing these podcasts, we've been talking about how American racing is too lenient. They don't come down on anybody. They bend the rules and they look the other way. I'm going to make a proposal. I think we should put the Jockey Club of Saudi Arabia and put them in charge of all American racing. They had 2 days of racing. They're launching an investigation into the winner of the big race, 20 million. They caught a guy using cobalt, and they came down with an iron fist on jockeys, whipping their horses and breaking the rules with fines that we've never heard before. So, let's forget about the NTRA, the Jockey Club, the Thoroughbred Safety Coalition, whatever. I want the people from Saudi Arabia to come in and run American racing. Now, having said that, Joe, I am going to firmly disagree with you on something here. I don't think a single thing will happen to maximum security for this race. And here's why. If he doesn't test positive for drugs in the Saudi Cup, what basis do they have for taking any action against him? Now, they're the Saudis. They can do whatever they want. I understand that. They don't play by the normal rules that we play by here in the United States.
Especially after you put them in charge of all of American racing.
Right, exactly. Okay. But first of all, it's clear that the drug testing process has already been completed because it's been, about a month and a half, and the drug testing process, which is done by a lab in France, did catch this guy with cobalt. So that leads me to believe that the drug testing process has been completed. And as he did in all his races in the US, that maximum security didn't test positive for anything. So again, look, everybody loves to hate Jason Servis. Everybody loves to hate maximum security. Everybody wants, him to just fry and the horse to be disqualified and all sorts of not so nice things to happen to them. And, I don't want to be an apologist for them or stick up for them, but I really don't see how they can take him down other than, like I said, they're the Saudis, they'll do whatever the hell they want.
Yeah, and Bill, you totally stole my thunder. So, I don't have much to add onto it. I spoke to 2 attorneys over the past couple of days since your story broke and basically asked them the same question. What jurisdiction or authority does the Saudi Jockey Club have to withhold money if the horses didn't test positive. And basically they said the same thing. They said, they can do what they want because it's their rules and it's their ball and they can take it and go home. And then the West would have to go and sue them, the Jockey Club for the monies. But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to they don't really have the power if the horse doesn't test positive to withhold the monies. But it's going to be a legal fight and it'll go on, for a long time before anyone sees the money. I think somebody touched on it a couple of minutes ago, and that is this may not affect what happened with, these monies or this horse, but going forward, are other people going to send their horses over as readily, knowing that even if they ring the bell and they win and they get to celebrate, that the funds may be withheld for some other reason. And that's not to say that's always going to happen, but it's got to be in the back of your mind.
Yeah, I guess I think it's a one-off. I don't think that I would be deterred if I had something in the running for a $20 million horse race. I don't think I'm going to call the trip off because I'm worried about some indiscriminate ruling or something like that. What's interesting, so Mike Smith and Irad Ortiz had their appeals heard. Their fines were upheld. So Mike Smith was fined 60% of his share of the $3.5 million earned by Midnight Bisou. If she got put up, then he's got to surrender 60% of $1 million. So it's
I think he would take it though, because it would still net out.
It would make him whole, right?
Yeah, right. Make him more.
So it's a strange situation. I agree. I don't think anything's going to come of this situation. Or maybe Gary West will spend countless millions of dollars litigating this in Riyadh. Who knows?
Well, the silver lining of all this is going to take money away from the legal fund against Joe Bianca for previous. So, it's Joe's $1,200, check from the government versus the West money less what they're going to have to, use in the legal fund. You're catching up, Joe.
Hey, guys. Gary West can't sue the Saudi Arabian people. It doesn't work that way. This is not America. This is not, where we have set rules and protocols for this. He can sue them, and you know what they'll do? They'll laugh in his face and say, get lost. That's all. So I think you're being a little unrealistic there. But again, these are all hypotheticals. If they don't take the horse down, there's nothing to sue them over. But look, Gary West sues everybody. We know that. He's a very litigious person. But, there can't be any path to filing a lawsuit in Saudi Arabia. This is a government that is run by the ruling family. They make up the rules. You don't see them.
Not a real robust court system.
I just don't think Perry Mason's running around Saudi Arabia trying to look out for the rights of poor racehorse owners who might have been unjustly having their horses taken down. This is not America. It's a totally different world, and they don't play by the same rules.
I think that's why the Saudi Arabian
was tongue in cheek. I was. I promise.
I think that's why the Saudi Arabian show Law and Order was it was a very short show. It was like 2 seconds.
Guilty.
Bump. Bump, bump.
Okay.
And Ice-T went, what? I don't understand.
Yeah, those poor overwhelmed public defenders in Saudi Arabia. This week's news is sponsored by West Point Thoroughbreds. Owning a multiple grade stakes winning racehorse like Hard Not to Love is attainable with a racing partnership like West Point Thoroughbreds. Partnerships enable you to spread your ownership across several horses for less than it would cost to own one horse alone. This increases your racetrack action and chances for a big horse. Check out why West Point Thoroughbreds is the gold standard in racing partnerships. Visit their website, westpointtb.com. So absent much racing news this week on the West Point front, John Green brought this up, and it was a good idea to talk about West Point and Terry Finley, how they've been involved with the Racetrack Chaplaincy of America in New York. And they're doing a lot of good in terms of feeding backstretch employees. Obviously, the backstretch in New York, specifically Belmont, has been hit pretty hard by this. So I wanted to give a shout out to them and Terry Finley. And we've also been pitching in here at the TDN in terms of advertising. John, do you have anything to add?
No, just that it's in a difficult time. It's important for us to recognize people that are stepping up. And certainly, with Terry and his wife, Debbie, and just how much time and effort and energies they've put into this association with the with the racetrack chaplaincy and also with the NITHA board. So I just wanted to make sure that they had a platform to be able to talk a little bit about some of the altruistic work that they're doing, the fact they're raising funds, to help pay for services and meals for a lot of the employees on the backstretch, and just a tip of the hat, to West Point and to Terry Finley, just for organizing that, and also getting it to a critical mass where all of us can be involved and help the people that go unsung. I mean, what they do for the horses and for the industry as a whole just sometimes goes unrecognized, and the people shouldn't go unrecognized, and neither should the efforts by West Point and by NITHA, and the Thoroughbred Daily News as well, for all of the efforts and money that they're putting into this program.
We'll be right back after this message from West Point Thoroughbreds. Bill had a really interesting story over the weekend with Joe Sutton, who's an owner. He has a lot of horses with Eddie Keneally. He's had some pretty nice horses. He had a horse, Scabbard, who had to be renamed for a reason we won't get into, who had run behind Blackberry Wine before. Now, Blackberry Wine is the horse, the Joe Sharp horse, who has now been DQ'd twice because of levamisole positives. And he had a lot of great quotes in here. I wanted to read some of them for you because I think it echoes a lot of what we've been saying ever since the doping scandal dropped in about this Joe Sharp thing at Fairgrounds. He says there's a couple of issues here. Number one, why is he allowed to compete in the race? It's supposed to be a race for 3-year-olds who have only won one time. He's won 3 times, even if 2 of them resulted in a disqualification because of drugs. I was shocked to see that he was permitted to run in the race. Those races should have counted against his conditions, even if he was taken down. I guess that's not the rule. That's something we said right off the jump when it comes to actually punishing trainers and owners of horses who get DQ'd later on for drug positives, that they should lose the condition. He also went on to echo one of my ideas. I got to call this guy. We're really on the same terms here. He goes, there needs to be a new set of rules for horses who fail tests. Maybe they shouldn't be allowed to race for 60 days until the drugs get out of their systems. We have to use common sense. There has to be a better solution. This is not good for horse racing. There have been multiple problems with drugs with this trainer, and it seems like horse racing doesn't care. Kind of hard to argue with him on that. And he was talking about how Joe Sharp has continued to be able to be allowed to ship this horse to different jurisdictions where he then fails drug tests, and he still gets to run in these lower condition races and clean up. It's really, it's like I said, it echoes a lot of what we've been saying, but it's really good to see an owner come out specifically talking about a specific horse and a specific trainer, because I think there's been a lot of consternation from owners in general in this doping scandal. Obviously, it's horrible for the game, blah, blah, blah. But to have this kind of specific call out, I think is a big thing. And Joe Sutton is not a small owner. And he talked later in the piece about how this might make him divest a little bit out of racing. And I just want to say personally, before I open it up to you guys, if any other owners out there or trainers out there are frustrated, you can email me personally, joebianca@gmail.com. We will take your call and we will air your grievances for you on the air, because I think even if you want to stay anonymous, I think it really helps to have people in this industry call this out for what it is. And I appreciate you doing the story, Bill. What are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, back to my point, if the Jockey Club of Saudi Arabia was in charge of this, Joe Sharp would be suspended for 34 years. All purses would be taken away, and Blackberry Wine wouldn't be allowed to race until 2042. So that's that point. Yeah, it was really refreshing to see this guy come out and say this. And, too many owners and trainers, and I've never understood this, that, they're the ones that are impacted by, quote unquote cheating. And yet they just sit idly by and just, take their wounds and don't say anything. I will say, there's many facets to this story. And I got to give a shout out to Brian DiDonato, who does this podcast with us off and on throughout the time we've been doing it. He brought this very point up several weeks ago, where he said it was just ridiculous for this horse to keep these conditions. Now, there's a lot of things in horse racing that we'd like to fix, but are not easy fixes. This is an easy fix. Every state racing commission in the country tomorrow should adopt new rules that if you win a race and you're declared positive, you lose that condition. And that was Sutton's main problem. Now, ironically, Blackberry Wine did not win this race. He finished second, but he did finish ahead of Scabbard further. So that's number one. And number two, it gets back to another thing too. I don't really understand, and I haven't seen anybody write a good explanation. Why did Sharp get 8 positives for a class 2 drug in Louisiana and was fined $8,000, which is a ham sandwich, and never had to serve any time or days? I don't understand that. Now, maybe there's mitigating circumstances that we're not privy to, but on the surface, that looks like a racing commission that just really went for the slap on the wrist when a more severe penalty was in order. And that sends the wrong message, the message that we've been talking about week after week after week on our podcast, that kind of message has to stop. And people in this game have to take these problems more seriously. So yeah, good for Joe Sutton to opening up the dialogue on this.
And this is exactly one of the 2 stories that, that I was alluding to in our opener, as far as proud to be an owner. Because I'm glad that somebody of Joe Sutton's size in the industry and worth in the industry came out and said, this isn't right. And when I first started reading the article, I had a different kind of view to it. And the first part of the article was really talking about, why is this horse running against, why against my horse? Why do I have to run against Blackberry Wine again? And I was taught a long time ago that you let your performance do the talking, and then afterwards you can circle back and make a point. And his horse didn't run any good, and that's horse racing. I mean, he was the second or third choice in the race. Sutton's horse was, and unfortunately didn't fire that day. So he didn't really have a grievance in that sense. However, the bigger story is what we're talking about, which is why are racing jurisdictions giving these trainers slaps on the wrist for egregious? I mean, it wasn't like it was a minor issue. It was almost the equivalent of a felony for drugs, as far as, this one particular horse and 7 others. I mean, the guy's been a multiple cheater, and you can't even say alleged, because now he's been confirmed, because he did get fined. So the system's in place as far as, if a horse does, miraculously get caught cheating, through a drug test, which is like a needle in a haystack, quite frankly. And then on top of it, now that you did catch somebody, you're giving him $1,000 fine. That's the problem is, the guy gets to walk away with all the money from the horses that don't get caught. And then it's like a joke that he has to write a check for $8,000 in this case. And gets away with it. As far as the conditions and everything like that, I've read on Twitter, people have said, well, maybe they should change the condition books to say for horses that haven't, finished first or hit the wire first. That's all nonsense and BS. It's the conditions are the conditions. And if the horse still has the condition, then he should be eligible to run for that condition again. The question is, do you give it days? Do you give the horse days, 45, 60, whatever the period of time is, for the drug or the substance to fully metabolize itself out of the system, out of its system, and then allow it to run again? Because for all intents and purposes, if it's a couple of months at that point, then they've missed a great opportunity to make money while the horse is sound. There was one other thing that really crystallized the situation to me, and there was, if you have time to Google a piece that Victoria Keith wrote for the NTWO that talks about examining the plausibility of drug positives. And it's only 2 pages, so it actually held my attention. I could actually read it. And basically it talks about like the BS that trainers give as far as what their answers are, as to why they came up positive for certain things. And she totally blows it away as far as, what the reality is of this over-the-counter cattle warmer and why a trainer would use it, versus, the way that in this case, this trainer gets all their other medications and drugs to work on their horses. And it's laughable when you read, the scientific backing that she talks about as to why a trainer would ever say, oops, I didn't know.
I mean, there has to be absolute accountability. Bill, I'm with you. I don't think the horse should be able to run for the A other than having crossed the line first 3 times. And then too, as regards the penalties, like these slaps on the wrist, they have to stop. And you look at other jurisdictions around the world, they come down with and rule with an iron fist, and the penalties are penal. So if the penalties are supposed to be deterrents, let's hammer these people and let's deter them in a financial sort of way from doing these things again. There's a jockey in Australia the other day won a Group 1 race, hopped off his horse, gave the trainer a hug. He was fined $2,000. In this situation, it's just not penal enough, our system, and we need to come down on these people to help ensure that they don't try to put one over on us, and so it doesn't happen again.
I think that's why it's so important for guys like Joe Sutton to speak out, because it's one thing for all of us in the media to get outraged and shake our fists and pound the table and all that. But in the end, we really don't have that much influence. We like to think we do. We hope that there are some people, some decision makers who are listening to us every week. And I think, there are certain things we've talked about that have changed, but overall, the owners have the leverage. The owners have the leverage to tell these tracks and these jurisdictions, like, if you don't cut this out, I'm not going to run my horses here. And I might try to get out of the game entirely or sell off stock. Like, this is a problem that reaches the decision makers and the powers that be in racing once the owners threaten to leave. Once the owners start trickling out of the sport because of stuff like this, then I think you're going to really get some people's attention. And even if they don't actually do it, to have this kind of, call out publicly by a guy like Joe Sutton, I think is huge, because these are their peers. You know what I mean? We're kind of just shouting from the gallery here. These are their peers. And I think that there is kind of a fraternity in racing that a lot of people kind of look the other way on a lot of this stuff because they're friends with the owner or the trainer, or have been hesitant to really call this out. So I appreciate what Joe Sutton did. And I think, like I said, if you want to come on the show, we will be glad to have another owner on the show who wants to talk about this kind of stuff, because it is a big problem and your voice matters here. Your voice is meaningful. Like, he doesn't have to be a gigantic owner, just anybody that has some kind of prominence in the game. And this stuff has been pissing you off, because I know you're out there, because we're out here and we're mad about it. I know you're out there. You're the ones that are getting, most directly affected by it. For me, it's just annoying from a betting standpoint. Like, in the end, it doesn't really matter to me at all, but I know it matters to you guys. So we would love to have, whether it's talk to Bill or talk to me or come on the show, we would love to have more people speaking out in this way about these, like you said, slaps on the wrist in racing, and how they don't fix what is an inherent problem in the sport.
Hey, Joe, give your email address again. That's a very good idea, and I want people to.
I was going to do my cell number too.
Please do. Give your email address out again.
Home address. Let's go.
No. Your email.
Are you serious? What
it's just my name @gmail.com. Hit me up. Come on. Okay. I got a spam filter. Bring it on. But no, I'm serious. I would love to hear from people if they have any of these kind of grievances, because, Joe Sutton is definitely not the only guy who is, steaming about stuff like this. We'll be right back after this message from Keeneland. All right, so let's transition a little bit into some racing news. Thank God for Oaklawn and Gulfstream. We actually do have like a little bit of racing to talk about in these next coming weeks. It was reported yesterday. Bill said that Oaklawn is not going to extend their meet beyond May 2nd. I think that's reasonable. We had the Oaklawn Stakes over the weekend, which is now, it used to be like a race for lesser 3-year-olds, and I guess it still is, but it seemed like more of a prep for the Arkansas Derby this time around because of the spacing on the calendar now, for the Arkansas Derby now less than 3 weeks away. The way I took that race is like, yeah, this is the B team. This is the underclass of the 3-year-old race now, because none of the big horses really showed up. 1,000 Words, I feel kind of vindicated when he was like really kind of the talk of the town earlier in the 3-year-old year. I wasn't that impressed. And he finished third last. Basin was okay. Basin finished fourth. Shoplifted fifth. Gold Street, who won the Smarty Jones earlier in the year, fell back to eighth. I think what this race showed is that there is a clear upper echelon of 3-year-olds. It's not that big. I would say Tiz the Law and maybe a couple others. And it made me look forward even more to the Arkansas Derby because we have the prospect of Charlatan and Nadal, maybe the two most talented 3-year-olds in the country, both coming from the Bob Baffert barn, set to clash in the Arkansas Derby. It's going to be a really interesting race because, they're both speed horses to this point. I think they've both made their bones on the lead, and one of them is going to have to rate because the instructions are obviously not going to be from Bob Baffert. Yeah, go out there and you two fry each other and we'll see who's best because, they're going to cancel each other out. I'm thankful to have a race to look forward to in that way. I'm really excited, especially to see Charlatan and how he steps up against better competition because he's had a pretty easy time of it so far in his 2 races, even though he's been brilliant. Any thoughts from you guys about the Oaklawn Stakes and the Arkansas Derby?
Yeah, this is one of the silver linings to what is going on. The very few stakes races that are out there that are on the calendar, which is really comes down to Oaklawn and Oaklawn only right now, are just coming up huge. I don't know for a fact, but I really doubt that Baffert would run both Nadal and Charlatan against one another when there would have been other opportunities like the Santa Anita Derby, the Bluegrass and Wood Memorial, et cetera. And now he's pretty much forced to. So, this is going to be a great and fascinating race. I'm covering the Kentucky Oaks, so I'll have my top 10 for it in tomorrow. And everybody and their brother is running in the fantasy the day before the Arkansas Derby. So you can have a similar situation for that. So, yeah, this is going to be one of the most interesting Arkansas Derbies there's ever been. And then you're going to hit the pause button and wait, what'll it still be, 4 months until we see these horses again, which is kind of disappointing. And one other thing I wanted to just bring up about the Oaklawn races is, kind of got lost in the shuffle as everything does this time of year when everybody's thinking about 3-year-olds. But Tom's de Tot is a very good horse. Now, I know he didn't beat much in the race they had there, the Oaklawn Mile, but, this horse is just pounding out triple-digit buyer numbers every single time. And what's really cool about him on top of everything else is he's a 7-year-old stallion. And he's just now finding himself at this age. He found himself last year at 6. I know we had Al Stahl on many moons ago on the podcast, but he's a neat horse. And I'm surprised that they said they don't want to go in the Oaklawn handicap with him. Where's he going to show up? Who knows? Again, it's just a big guessing game. But yeah, thank goodness that Oaklawn is out there and providing this level of racing. Otherwise, we'd have nothing to talk about with Bonner Park.
It was an interesting race. It was a race that speed went out there and kind of fell apart. And, Farmington Road and Mr. Big News kind of picked it up at the end and got past everybody. But I don't think we're going to be talking about too many of these horses, in August and September. It was a nice undercard race. And, Mr. Big News did put in a big run to win the race. But for all intents and purposes, it was like, yeah, but, are these horses really going to do anything, of importance down the road? The winner ran an 87 buyer. I think, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, but Charlatan and Nadal have all, have both posted triple digits at this point, buyers. So racing head to head on paper, at least, he would be way behind, based on the buyers. And quite frankly, this time of year, most good to decent allowance and stake horses should be running mid 80s.
So for many years on the Derby undercard, Arkansas Derby undercard, they ran a race called the Northern Spur, which was basically the 1 mile consolation for horses not quite good enough. So let's call this race that. I wasn't so impressed by the winner as I was with Farmington Road. He had an awful draw at Fairgrounds last time and another terrible draw this time. Now he got the setup and he followed the winner into the stretch. He might have given the race away as he started to lug in about the 16th hole and got beat 3 parts or so. I give him a look going forward. I think he might be the ultimate wise guy horse for people looking for a wise guy horse. There were a couple of very interesting, like the whole card on Saturday, Oaklawn was phenomenal. There were 2 allowance races, both won with an 89 buyer, so both better than the stakes. One in different ways. A horse called Pneumatic by Uncle Mo. He became a TDN Rising Star with a really fast finish off a wide trip, and Shooter's Shoot, who's part owned by podcast guest once upon a time, Eric Johnson.
Friend of the show. That's what you're supposed to say. Friend of the show.
Friend of the show. He dueled the inside of Black Bear One in that race. Those two went toe to toe for the entire 8 furlongs, and they went 400ths faster than the second division. So Shooter Shoot looked good doing it. They might be fringe players, but Farmington Road might be an interesting stab for the Arkansas Derby.
I would kind of liken this. I was talking to my friends last night. I was saying that there's never been a more anticipated sports broadcast, I don't think, in the history of America than this NFL draft coming up next week, because we are just grasping for things. So we were talking last week about the 2K tournament. I was actually forcing myself to get into it. Horse was terrible. The horse thing on ESPN was not good. So I think we're dying for this NFL draft to come. Even if you're not a big football fan, like you gotta be interested at least a little bit, just for some content. I think that's kind of similar with the Arkansas Derby. You know what I mean? Like there's such a vast wasteland in racing beyond that race that I think it's going to be like manna from heaven to be able to watch that race and get excited about it. I'm sure we'll do a big long preview of it in the week preceding the race. But we're really looking forward to that, just because. God damn, I miss racing. I miss racing across the board. It's nice that we have these little morsels still going on, but we miss it. We miss it on a nationwide scale. Kind of wanted to transition from that into something interesting that's happening at Gulfstream this week, which is tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday. They're running the first 2-year-old races of the year in America, as far as I know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they're running some 2 furlong races at Arapahoe Downs or something. But 4.5 furlongs. There's a filly version on Thursday and then a colt version on Friday. Really not that interesting. I looked at them. I was ready to do this whole long preview about these races. There was one interesting thing on Friday's race. In the colt race, the first foal out of Lady Shipman, who was a brilliant turf sprinter, ran 8 straight 100-plus buyers on the turf. Her first foal, a colt by Uncle Mo, is going to debut homebred for Wesley Ward in Friday's race in the colt version. Interestingly, he's debuting on the dirt, even though he's worked a lot faster on the turf and the synthetic than the dirt. But I wanted to bring that up just because that's something to look forward to, because this interruption has really had an effect on the 2-year-old calendar. And the 2-year-old, for racing fans, as much as seeing the cherry blossoms on the trees, and the leaves come on, it's a rite of spring to watch these babies start to run and to really start to get excited about the future. Spring's about rebirth, and the 2-year-old starting to run and racing is a rebirth. There's always something new to look forward to when you have the babies, and people start dreaming about the Derby, obviously a long way ahead. This has been a real interruption for 2-year-old racing and sales. I did a story last week where I talked to a bunch of consignors about what's happening, because there's thousands of 2-year-olds that are supposed to be able to sell right now in these next couple of months. And the closest sale on the calendar right now is the OBS April sale, which is scheduled for June 9th to 12th. Who even knows if that's going to be possible? So this is a really tough time, especially for people who are owners of 2-year-olds, to try to figure out whether they're going to be able to sell or be able to race. Now, horses that we're going to sell might go to race, but that's going to take some time. So it's really going to affect the 2-year-old calendar more than anything. But it's nice. It's nice to see those little morsels of rebirth in racing in tomorrow and Friday's cards at Gulfstream. What do you guys think about this 2-year-old interruption?
Joe, I want to talk about the 2-year-olds, but we're on the subject of Gulfstream. Did anybody notice the story that broke late last night or early this morning, that, I kid you not, the governor of Florida has decreed that World Wrestling, WWE, is an essential business and is able to go on. So they're going to have wrestling in Florida with no fans in the stands. But, one of the things is, throughout this, we've all been holding our breath about, will Gulfstream keep going? There's this rumor that they're going to close down after the Florida Derby. If the governor says wrestling is okay, then I think Gulfstream, all the pressure is off Gulfstream. They're going to be fine. And that also might impact, actually, you're talking about the OBS sale, and when the governor says that wrestling is an essential business, who isn't essential then? If there's anything more non-essential than racing that is allowed to go on, not racing, wrestling that's allowed to go on. So this may actually play into OBS being able to have the sale. So I sorry for digressing there. But I think what we're going to see at Gulfstream early on is just Wesley Ward show, not able to perform at Keeneland, is going to do his magic with 2-year-olds at Gulfstream. He's got a horse in the filly race and a horse in the colt race. And beyond that, though, we're also seeing the first examples of the new rules put together by the Safety Coalition. Lasix is not being permitted in these 2-year-old races. And on top of that, the horse have to be actual 2 years old, not just born on January 1 2-year-old, but if a horse is a May foal, they can't run until their actual birth date. So that'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. I talked to Wesley ages ago before anybody ever heard of coronavirus. He said he has no problem running his 2-year-olds without LASIK. So, I think we'll see the same thing we've seen at Keeneland. A lot of Wesley Ward horses paying $320 to win.
Yeah, this is about as exciting as the horses that ran 4th through 11th in the Oaklawn Stake. I mean, I don't think we're going to see any of these babies.
Let's see this whole spiel about how exciting it is to have 2-year-old races, and the 2 you just dump on it right away.
You just gave your email address out to be able to say owners with, dissenting voices you want to hear from. This is an owner with somebody that doesn't agree with you, Joe.
You don't count. I get to hear your dissenting voice every week. That doesn't count.
If my voice is in your head, then you got a bigger problem than that. But we're not going to see any. I would give you 1,000 to 1 odds that we're going to see any of these horses in the Breeders' Cup juvenile races. None of these horses ever run, of any high caliber after April or May. As good as Wesley is about winning these races, none of them really ever transcend and do anything down the road. And it's a big ho hum. It's great that they're allowing babies to stable at Gulfstream and Palm Meadows and Payson. That's actually a wonderful thing. And we've actually just graduated a couple of our babies over to Palm Meadows so they can start to train on the bigger track and with more horses and kind of graduate through the experience. But we're not running them in April. I mean, let's say best case scenario, this Uncle Mo homebred wins. What are you going to do with it at that point? You're going to have to put it away for 4 months before they start running allowance or stake races anyway. So to me, it's what now?
Not with Wesley. Wesley will go to Royal Ascot in December.
He's going to have like a match race basically somewhere, or maybe Fawner. Who knows? But it's kind of like, well, all right, I guess we're going to win this race and then put the horse away for 4 months and let it grow and develop. It doesson really amount to anything, for me, other than it's just another race that I would avoid betting.
By the way, I thought Tyshawn, who was 4th at Oaklawn, I thought his performance was, anyways. Gosh, we could spend a whole while on
Wesley. Is that better? Is that a better analogy?
What's that? 4th through 11th?
If I say 5th, the horses that finished 5th through 11th?
But Wesley's got Kimari, who won well. Bound for Nowhere, who he sent out to California before they shut down. I mean, these are horses that he would normally be getting ready to send to Royal Ascot. So, it'll be interesting to watch and see what happens. They've already said that if Royal Ascot goes on, it goes on without spectators. That's the 3rd week of June or so. So, waits to be seen what happens there. But, listen, it's good to have 2-year-old racing. It's good to see. I kind of half thought maybe Oaklawn would try to put one on, but I guess it's getting late in the game for that. But yeah, it's always nice to see the babies come on.
Yeah, like you guys don't miss Keeneland and 2-year-old racing? Like, Jesus Christ. Like, come on. This lockdown is making you too cynical.
I guess so. What I was happier to see with Gulfstream is that in the new condition book, they're writing overnight stakes.
Yeah, that's a big one too. We wanted to talk about that, the 3-year-old stakes that they're adding. Only $75,000, but probably going to oversubscribe. Just because, more so than 2-year-olds, obviously, people need a place to run their 3-year-olds this time of the year. So appreciate you mentioning that. Any idea if you have any 3-year-olds capable of those stakes, John?
Yeah, well, Proven Strategies is actually going to run in the turf 3-year-old stake race. That we have. It's a horse we have with Mark Cassidy that ran in the Breeders' Cup and only lost by 2 lengths in the Breeders' Cup. And then subsequently brought him back and broke his maiden because he was a maiden running in California in the Breeders' Cup. And he's been progressively, improving. He's no blue buff, but he's pretty good in his own right. So he'll be running on, I almost said Derby Day, shame on me, on May 2nd in one of the 3-year-old stake races at Gulfstream. But kudos to the Gulfstream management for a lot of reasons. They've done a lot of really wonderful things without a playbook in this uncertain period of time. But they recognize that they have the horse population on hand that need to have these either money allowance or minor stake races because all these horses that normally left to go to New York or Keeneland or Churchill are still on the grounds, and they still have an appetite and an audience for those kind of races. So they could have gone the cheap route and they could have run more claiming races and gone the natural book that they've gone for the summertime. But again, a tip of the hat to them for recognizing what they have on the grounds and offering the betting public a better kind of a higher standard of racing.
And I was going to say to Bill's point about the wrestling thing, I think the wrestling thing has a lot to do with who is in this administration. I think Linda McMahon has a lot of sway in terms of whether or not wrestling is able to go on. The Florida governor has an ear to the White House. That's all I'll say. So horse racing, I don't think has that benefit. I think we're kind of just going on our own here.
When you think that wrestling is sitting there and saying, oh, well, if racing is going on, then we should be able to go on. Like, don't you think that they feel like that, they have kind of a better product?
Yeah, but they're not. Yeah, but they don't have like the horse care aspect of it. We do have that. We have to have the back stretches open to care for the horses. Yeah, I had a friend text me. He was like, apparently wrestling and horse racing are essential businesses in Florida. I was like, don't put us on the same par with wrestling. Like we actually have a need to take care of the horses. But yeah, that's the perception, I guess.
That is the perception.
Frivolous businesses that you get to keep going in the friggin' wild, wild west of Florida. But yeah, no, we're happy Gulfstream is running and they have these stakes. And I'm happy for the 2-year-old races, even if you guys don't care. We're super pleased this week to be joined by Keeneland CEO Bill Thomason. Obviously, there's a lot to talk about. Let's talk to Bill. The Green Group Guest of the Week is sponsored by The Green Group, an accounting, tax consulting, and advisory firm specializing in the thoroughbred industry. With more than 500 clients in the horse business, they were bred to save you money. For more information on how they can help you, visit www.greenco.com. So we're thrilled for our Green Group Guest of the Week to bring in a man who can't help but make news as the president and CEO of Keeneland, Bill Thomason. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me.
The good news is you're the best looking guy on the podcast, so that's a good thing to start off with.
That's also not saying much.
I'm getting close to getting back to old high school hair here.
Between me and Bill Thomason, who's got the best hair here?
I think Brian DiDonato does.
Oh, absolutely. So we'll start with this. I guess the big news that you guys have made is that the plan is full steam ahead with the Keeneland September sale, and I think that's a big deal for a lot of people in the industry to kind of have that steady thing to look forward to on the calendar. My question was, you guys obviously have not been specific about how that's going to happen yet, and that's understandable because nobody knows how anything is going to happen now these days. But Inglis in Australia put on a virtual sale recently. Is that something you guys would consider? And if so, what do you think that would look like?
Well, Joe, one of the things that makes it easier for me is as people are asking me questions right now, for almost everything, I get to say yes, because there's so many things that we don't know right now. Yeah. The important thing that we've got to do is this marketplace counts on September 2nd. It's the largest, most important yearling sale in the world, and all of our breeders and where these horses are, they've already had so much that's gone into the production of the horses, and now they're on their farms and they've been watching them since they were born. And now they're getting ready to get into prep season. When we say business as usual, we've got to add some comfort to the marketplace that, listen, we talk to our customers. September 14th, even though it's a long way away, we know it's not. We know it's right upon us. So the first thing we've got to say is, listen, everybody, this marketplace is really important, and we know that. We know how important it is to our customers. We've been talking to them, and it's like, let's get ready for this marketplace that the world counts on every single year. So the business as usual part is getting horses ready. They're on the farms. They're growing. They're being prepared. The hardworking grooms that are on the farms are taking these horses and raising them. This doesn't just happen overnight. So that's the part that's business as usual. Let's get ready. And then count on us to be looking at all the other things that we know that we don't know right now that we're preparing for. We are counted on to, number one, bring two things together. We bring these best horses in the world together in a critical mass to a marketplace that people are going to be counting on. So the horses are going to be there. So that's what's going on right now. Now we start working on making sure that we add certainty to that marketplace to be able to bring the world to Keeneland. That's going to evolve in the coming months for what that's going to look like. We're in the process now of developing protocols. The first thing we got to do is people. We know people are scared. They're scared for their health. They're worried about the economics of the marketplace. They want to take care of their families. We know those things are. We know those things are happening. We know the angst that's going on outside in their business. But we've got to evolve. We've got to make sure that people feel safe. We can say all we want to do, but the science is going to dictate where we go with this. We've got to beat this virus. That's the first thing that we've got to do. And then we've got to be developing protocols in every facet of our lives right now where people feel safe. And then we start opening up our economy and taking that certainty as we make people feel safe and make sure that we protect this marketplace. So, yeah, we're working right now, developing the protocols for what this is going to look like as we start talking in these coming months and giving people that certainty and travel plans. It's travel for people that will be able to come to Keeneland, or they won't be able to come to Keeneland. What are we going to do? When they get to the grounds, they're going to feel safe. The horses have got to get there. We got to take care of the grooms who are taking care of the horses. So there's a whole system here of different levels of certainty that we got to be able to provide to people that we're working on every single day, and it's evolving. As we call it's evolving by the hour, actually.
Hey, Joe, hey, Bill, it's Bill Finley here. Thanks for joining us. And again, understanding that the answer to virtually every question is going to be, we don't know, as you just mentioned about the uncertainty. But let's take you from the sales ring to the racetrack. And I'm sure we're going to go back and forth with the writers here and talk about both. There was some talk that Keeneland may want to run some dates beyond what is scheduled for the fall. So take us through that. Is that the case? And perhaps could we see a longer meet or some extra days? And what is the status of the fall meet as a whole right now?
Well, the fall meet is being planned. Listen, October, it's really important. We're planning for a routine October race meet. We're planning for an extraordinary Breeders' Cup, which we know that everybody's excited about coming to Central Kentucky again and coming back to Keeneland. But then the reality of it is we know that everything that I just said revolving the sales is going to be the same thing revolving the race meet. We can talk all we want about how we're going to plan for normal operations, but the science is going to dictate where we are at the point, different points when we get there, we evolve. So listen, we plan the best, and we plan for everything in between. So but what I can tell you is that right now the deck is shuffled. We know that states are going to open back up. Businesses are going to open back up on a state-by-state basis. There's been questions about how that's going to happen, but we live in a state with a governor who's taken a very aggressive approach to this virus, which we're proud of and we agree with. And we've had great communication with our governor and our local officials and the public health employees that are involved in this and making those decisions. And we're going to continue to do that. So as this evolves, we know that the deck's been shuffled all over the country with the racing schedule, and we know that there's no racing in Kentucky, and it's not going to happen again until the science dictates that we can do that safely, and that's for the people caring for the horses and whoever's going to be attending the races. So right now we're working with all of our, with the state officials. We're working with all the racetracks together in conjunction in Kentucky to provide protocols for how, first off, how can we safely get horses back into the state with the grooms, with the people who are most important to be able to care for those horses. And then how can we structure our race meets in a way that we can provide safely for those participants to run, if it's which it will start as spectatorless racing. We know that, but we've got to show that we can do that responsibly. And so that's ongoing right now. And I will say that even before this, we'd had unparalleled and historic cooperation among all the racing jurisdictions in Kentucky to work together. Now that this crisis is upon us, and we're even able to start looking ahead to say, all right, let's start planning for what a recovery could look like. We're doing that every single day. And we've got to, first off, develop the protocol that we feel good about, that we know will keep participants safe, that we know will keep the critical people involved in running a safe race meet with integrity. And then that's kind of first step. And then it's going to evolve from there. And the evolution is going to be as we feel comfortable and our regulators feel comfortable and the public health officials feel comfortable that we start incrementally being able to bring more normalcy back to all life as we know it, and especially back into sports and entertainment and other businesses. So it's ongoing. It's in process. We know that Churchill is the first racetrack up in Kentucky, and we're looking for opportunities. You know, these races, you got to think back in our spring meet, 18 stakes races that we had scheduled. Grade 1s, 5, 9 grade 1, grade 2s. These are really important races. 2 of those big races headed to the Kentucky Derby and to the Kentucky Oaks, along with those other stakes that are really important, the pedigrees and the breeders that, you know, that we're so responsible for in the central Kentucky area. So we're working with the racetracks to try to find a spot inside the schedule whenever we can figure out what the schedule can look like to be able to bring some of those races back. We know our horsemen want it and count on.
Bill, it's John Green, and again, thank you for coming on. We've had the pleasure of racing at Keeneland and also buying and selling at Keeneland, and it's always been a pleasure. I can remember back in when 9/11 occurred, a little bit before your time at in your current position at Keeneland, and the change of protocol actually that was adopted was that you had a dark day, and basically the dark day was now incorporated, going forward. So out of that tragedy, a good thing occurred. And what do you think is going to happen as far as the protocol that you guys are thinking about implementing for the sales that may be, kind of born out of this adversity, but ultimately will be a better thing down the road? And a perfect example that I can give is you guys are kind of waiving the entry fees until June to give everyone a little bit of time to put money in. Is there something else that you see that you can share with the audience that may be kind of a permanent thing going forward?
That all comes back into a little bit of that, yes. And, even though that 9/11 was before my time at Keeneland, it was certainly not before my time in the business. I've been in it for 40 years. Standing back in those barn areas as a consigner on day one of the sale whenever 9/11 occurred, and having that one of the first horses that was headed up into the ring at that moment in time, those are things that you don't forget. A point in history for all of us. And again, you bring up a good point there. I remember like it was yesterday, the fear that we all had for the lives that were lost and for the importance of the moment that was there, the significance of the impact that it could possibly have on all these hardworking people in this business. That's what I was doing. I was at Bridge Farm, and we were getting ready to sell our crop, and my goodness, it's everything. So you first worry about the people and happened, and then secondly you worry about the business, but that comes later. But you still have to be thoughtful of all that. And there are changes. So getting to the question, there are changes that came up. Absolutely. For all of us, there's a number of things across that we know have happened. English showed that. The opportunity, for what can happen in different marketplaces. And here we have kind of this virtual auction that occurred. And out of adversity, that's the other thing I found about this business. It adapts, and people they're reluctant and slow to change. But then whenever something of significance is put in front of us, and we've been through it, whether it's MRLS, whether it's health issues, horses and disease and whatever might happen, this industry comes together and figures it out. So we've had things that we've been looking at for a long time. We didn't think the marketplace was quite ready for it. We love the kind of the physical inspection of the horses is really important. People touching these horses and being able to be there on the grounds. We don't think that's always going to be important. But now we've got to be looking at everything, and that's what we're going to do. We've been looking at the opportunities for those virtual auctions and a little bit different opportunities that would complement our existing sales. So we have been looking at that actually for a while, and we'll have some things to talk about in the coming weeks about things that we've been working on, developing, and some opportunities. But it's also opening us up to even more opportunities coming, because we've got to put this marketplace in front of the world, and that's what Keeneland's known for. Our marketplace, we got 38 different countries that are going to come in there and buy horses. We know that there can be some restrictions, in different parts of the world that could be coming, so we have to be looking at that responsibly. And how are we going to make sure that we provide the kind of marketplace that people are used to coming out of Keeneland? And we're working in that direction too.
Hey, Bill, Alan Carrasco, thanks for being with us. I wanted to ask a slightly different question, not sales related or racing related, but Keeneland is obviously a key leader in the industry, but a key part of the Thoroughbred Safety Coalition. And I'm wondering how the ongoing situation is impacting the progress being made by the TSC.
Well, it's this group of 6 major racing jurisdictions and entities that are involved in the coalition. We're still meeting. We're still meeting consistently instead of face to face in different locations and different racetracks. We're doing what we're doing right now. So we're Zoom meeting. We have shifted some of our discussions, obviously, to coordination of activities and ideas and how we're all dealing with COVID-19 and the crisis that's going on inside the industry right now. Working together to find different ways in these different jurisdictions to bring racing back and to get our horses back competing again, and to safely be able to bring the people who are caring for those horses together and restart our business. So the short answer is that we are still communicating regularly. We are still on the same path that we were before, working together on issues of integrity and finding those places around the country where we can advance the different safety initiatives that we have talked about before. But the most important thing I believe for all of us is, because of that work we were doing already together in this past year, it's really been helpful to all of us. We're all working through this crisis, even though we're in different jurisdictions and we're going to come back in different ways, and different governors in different states and are going to handle things in different ways. There's certain things us working on together is going to help this national circuit that we got right now. The importance of the international parts of American racing to the sport. So the short answer is we're still working together and we're still consistently in communication. We just have to divert our attention here for a minute. Something that's really important right now.
I want to ask you a more personal question. It's obviously, this is something that is affecting different people in different ways. I can tell you here in New York City, it's an incredibly terrifying time. I have a girlfriend who's a veterinary nurse at an emergency hospital, so she's got to go into the city every day. It's pretty scary. I know that you have an even more immediate connection to that. Your daughter is on the front lines. Can you talk a little bit about that and about how it's kind of shaped your perception of this whole thing?
Well, for all of us, some of us, everybody is affected in different ways. And it's the thing at Keeneland that we've had to talk about every day. We've had to make, a lot of us, some really tough decisions. The decision that we had to make to cancel our spring meet was heart-wrenching. We fully get it. It's devastating to a lot of people who were counting on it. It's obvious, why it had to be made and where we are right now. But different people are being touched in different ways, and we know that. And people are afraid for their families. They're afraid for feeding their families. They're afraid for their ability to care for these horses and to do the things that they've been doing. They're afraid for their health and the health of their loved ones. That's what we've all got to have embraced, and we have to wrap our arms around right now together. First thing we got to do is we got to take care of our people. We've got to provide for the safety of everybody. We've got to defeat the virus. It determines everything. We know what we want to do, and in this fear, we know that our governor starts this every day. We are going to get through this. We are going to get through this together. He makes everybody repeat that, and we all need to do that. These are serious times. We need serious people. We need to defeat this virus. We need to do this together and stick together. And then we need to be thoughtful as we come back to make sure that all these sacrifices that people have made, we respect the people on the front lines who have been there taking care of us. We got to take care of them, and we've got to make sure that's our focus. We cannot mess this up unless let this come back. We've got to be thoughtful about it. We've got to be respectful of public health services and the people who want to do that responsibly to take care of our people. And then as a business and industries all across America, it's not just us. We are all in this together, and we got to responsibly bring this economy back, and we've got to do it in a responsible way, taking care of each other. So I really appreciate the question, and I know that everybody on the screen's got personal attachment to it as well, for your friends that that may have been sick, or your friends that you may have lost. We cannot let that win, and we got to keep that in mind as we find ways to responsibly open our business back up, and we open up around the country again.
Bill, two-part question, if you don't mind. I want to go back to what we were talking about when I brought up the fall meet. And I believe you said that you talked about, would it be spectator free? So again, knowing that everything is possible, has anybody discussed the possibility of a spectator free Breeders' Cup? And is that something that you and the Breeders' Cup officials are including in these myriad possibilities about what the landscape of racing is going to look like this fall?
We're absolutely looking through everything. It would be, for all of us, it'd be irresponsible not to consider every one of what those opportunities look like. Because we got to do, we look what they just announced just a little while ago. I think June 11th, they're talking about bringing the PGA back, or they're making plans for a spectatorless event in Charlotte. So all of us have to be thoughtful of that. We want to bring people back and let them be able to experience our sport again, see our athletes, get them competing. And that's so when we talk about normalcy, that's the first phase of normalcy. And then once again, like I said, the science is going to dictate how we go about it. So we're putting protocols in place first to make it safe to have spectatorless racing with the numbers of people that we need to do it, that we need to, again, with integrity and responsibility and safety, be able to allow our horses to compete and be able to showcase those races again. And then as we're able to provide whatever's going to be happening to us, to allow a ratcheting up, if you will, or increased participation by fans. And that's going to be happening everywhere. It's going to be happening in restaurants. So it all starts building as we start trying to open the economy back up. And we got to do the same thing inside racing. And we're providing for all those contingencies, working very closely with the Breeders' Cup right now on what our fall's going to look like.
I wanted to ask, because you mentioned the governor before and the kind of communication you've had with him. He has been one of the first ones to really be aggressive in terms of shutting things down. You guys were also. I wonder what the communication kind of looks like between you and the governor's office. Is Churchill involved as well? How does that whole thing go where you guys are in communication and kind of making decisions jointly?
Well, I mean, listen, this is every day. So even the governor and all of us are talking about the things that we don't know right now. We have a team in place and are developing even more so those teams. Well, you got to have, first off, we have to be led by the science, which we're doing. So the governor has great people advising him and the public health authorities, and you can see that every single day for what's happening in Kentucky, the thought that's going into how we're dealing with this, the flattening of the curve and the keeping our people safe. We're going to have the same, we got to do that first. So now we're planning for what are those right protocols as we start opening up. The social distancing is going to last for a while. So how to deal with that? And it's going to, once again, it's going to evolve, and the social distancing guidelines and how we're going to have to all deal with them as a society are going to start a little more extreme. And then as we're successful, they're going to start getting a little better as far as the number of people that can be in a group. The protocols you have to be in that group. But quite frankly, so we're anticipating that this is going to be for a while. When you come on grounds, you're asked questions by medical staff, your temperature's checked. We're being very thoughtful about, and then that happens every single day. So we're doing it throughout our grounds, our grooms, our social distancing. They're taking it seriously. People around the country are taking this seriously. So we're not having to fight to have this happen right now. They know we're trying to take care of them, and they're taking care of themselves because their livelihood depends on it. So that's the attitude we've all got to keep. If we're in this together, one person can't mess up. We've got to really be thoughtful about it. Every group that we're in. It's to say that it's every single day. We're developing protocols. We're working with the public health officials. We're not there yet, and having exactly what those are. But we know that we've got to put together good plans that public health officials agree with, that allow us to get racing started first without spectators, knowing that we can keep the people safe who are going to be involved. And we all understand that this is going to evolve, and success is going to dictate how quickly we're able to kind of start bringing this normalcy back. And it would be, none of us can set a date on that. It's just not, we know that. And so we're not setting a date. You can't do that. But we're going to be showing progress. That's what's really important. We're going to be showing hope. We're going to be showing progress. And the main thing is we're going to be communicating with all of you, with our fans, with our horsemen, to let them know the things that we're talking about, the plans that we're putting in place. As we know things, we're going to let people know, and we're also going to admit the places that we just don't know.
Thanks so much, Bill, for the time, and we hope that you and your family and everyone stay safe.
And same to you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, Bill. The Green Group Guest of the Week is sponsored by the Green Group, an accounting, tax, consulting, and advisory firm specializing in the thoroughbred industry. As this week's Green Group Guest of the Week, Bill Thomason will receive a free 1-hour tax consultation. The Green Group, bred to save you money. For more information on how they can help you, visit www.greenco.com. We'll be right back after this message from the Green Group.
The Green Group is widely recognized as the top-rated tax and accounting firm specializing in the horse business. Why do the top owners, breeders, pinhookers, and trainers trust the Green Group as their tax advisors? The difference is experience. Firm founder Len Green has over 4 decades of experience owning, breeding, and racing horses. First-hand knowledge gives Green Group clients proven tax and money-saving strategies. Visit the Green Group at www.greenco.com. The Green Group, bred to save you money.
So before we get out of here, we wanted to mention something really cool that somebody in racing is doing. We try to highlight these stories every week, both in the paper and on the podcast. But this is, I think, one of the biggest moves anyone's done to kind of be a benefactor in racing at this time of struggle and need. Chuck Fipke yesterday, obviously a big owner, big breeder. He announced yesterday or the day before, I think it was yesterday, right? That he is allowing owners and breeders to breed to his stallions free of charge at Darby Dan Farm, which is, a big deal. Obviously, he doesn't have any blockbuster stallions there, but he's got a decent amount of middle class stallions there who would bring in probably hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, and this is something he's forfeiting for that. It's a really nice gesture, and it's something that we brought up a couple weeks ago when this whole thing first started. We kind of spitballed and bandied around ideas of how people on the upper echelon of the sport and the upper class of the sport could really help some of like the lower class and middle class of the sport. And I think this is it. Like this is what we were looking for. This is exemplary in terms of how you can help people weather the storm through this time. And I want to give a big shout out to Chuck Fipke. I've done stories with him before. He's one of the nicest guys you'll speak to. And we want to give a shout out to everybody at Darby Dan Farm as well for doing that. So that's a pretty big deal. Like I said, no show-stopping stallions, but it's something that'll make a difference, I think, in breeders' lives. John, your thoughts?
No question about it, Joe. And look, the guy has 7 stallions in 4 different jurisdictions, most of them at Darby Dan, but he also has, one in Canada and California and another one out west. None of them are big ticket stallions, like you mentioned, but in looking at the number of mares that were bred to those stallions in 2019, it was just over 200 mares. And if you use a rule of thumb of 2/3 of them are going to get in foal, or 2/3 of them are going to fall out and have live foals. And you multiply out the stud fees, at full freight, it's roughly like $500,000 to $600,000 of monies that he's giving up. Now you can argue that not all of them are going to pay, advertised stud fee and things, but it doesn't matter. The guy's basically giving away a couple $100,000 at a minimum out of his pocket for the mares bred in 2019. And then he doubled down and said, and any mare who's being bred to my stallions in 2020, I'm going to offer the same thing. So it's at a minimum, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars that he is giving up to give the smaller breeders of the industry an opportunity to get out of the foals and ultimately, race and flourish. So, again, in this week of topsy-turviness, to use a Bianca mannerism, okay, you have 3 major owners that stepped up: Terry Finley, Joe Sutton, and Chuck Fipke. And I just can't say enough about how wonderful it is and a breath of fresh air that those 3 in particular stepped up in very different ways and for very different reasons. But they're all helping the industry, and they're all helping clean up and make the industry better. And to me, there's nothing better than that, is helping your fellow man and helping him in a crisis, in a difficult situation like this. So I can't thank those 3 individuals enough, and encourage others to be able to give back and just give to this wonderful industry that sometimes we take for granted.
And Joe, I think we need to throw you in for expressions of generosity, giving out your email address. I thought that was equally generous in these trying times. Charles Fipke is not going to hurt for $500,000. I think any gesture of goodwill during these times is absolutely to be commended, no matter the quality or of the stallion. So hats off to him.
Yeah, I think John, your point is well made. That this is a time, I think, where people should feel overall a societal obligation that if you're more well off, you have really an obligation to make sure that other people who aren't as fortunate can see their way through this, because this is a terrifying time for everybody. But we all should have an investment in each other at this point, and I think. It's unfortunate. I think as time has gone on, a lot of people, there's been a lot more glorification of selfishness and get yours. And I think that the hopeful bright side and silver lining of this is it's a unifier. It's something that levels the playing field and makes everybody realize that they have an investment in the person next to them's success. And I think that it's great to see that in racing, especially because it is a game where there is so much churn going through the middle class and the lower classes of the sport. And, it's kind of chasing some people out of the game. I think it really is important for people to recognize that without those lower rungs of the sport, you have no sport. Without protecting and taking care of the backstretch workers and the lower level trainers and the breeders, if those people go away, there is no sport. There is no industry. And I think that this is a time for everybody to realize that on a grander scheme in terms of society, but especially in racing as well. And there's a lot of people who can afford it, who should, take take the example of Chuck Fipke and run with it. Obviously, it's easier for him to do than some other farms because he doesn't have shareholders. But this is a big step, and I think a big kind of, I don't know, gleaming example of what kind of difference you can make if you're at the top of the game in racing, and it will be appreciated. And, you know, if you want to email me too, I can take applications in terms of, you know, getting on the show, in terms of us shouting you out. You can email me there too. I'm just going to get 1,000 emails after this. But no, we appreciate Chuck Fipke. We appreciate anyone that's stepping up and recognizing that they have an opportunity and an obligation to take care of their fellow man. And I think that that's something we need more of in society in general, and we definitely need more of it in the sport. And, you know, everybody will be better off for it. So we appreciate Chuck. We appreciate Terry Finley and, you know, Joe Sutton, especially, you know, at the top of the show, not especially, but at the top of the show in a different way, you know, stepping out and making a claim and trying to clean up the sport. So there's different ways you can get involved. Obviously, money is the easiest thing to do, but I think we all have an opportunity and obligation to protect our fellow, you know, participants in this sport and to clean up the game and make it a better example for the rest of us. TDN Writers Room is brought to you by Keeneland, home of world-class racing and industry-leading sales. Entries for the 2020 September yearling sale are open through Friday, May 1st at september.keeneland.com. So that's going to do it for this week's episode of the TDN Writers Room presented by Keeneland. I want to thank Bill Finley, John Green, Alan Carasso, our Green Group guest of the week, Bill Thomason. Thanks to Bill for joining us. I know it's a busy time for him. I want to thank our producer, Patty Wolf, our editors, Nathan Wilkinson and Anthony LaRocca, our production coordinator, Michelle Sobrino. Thank you all for watching. We want you to stay safe, stay healthy. We'll see you next week.